What is up, everybody? My name is Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. I am one of the co-hosts. Morgan will be joining me shortly. We are going to be talking about the Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 animated film, Part 1 of 3 to my knowledge, best of my knowledge. So this is the first third of the adaptation in animation of the Crisis on Infinite Earths big crossovers comic book event that happened in the 1980s, which was a pretty big story for Supergirl. It did not go well for her in that comic book adaptation, but she goes out a hero. So we'll see if they take that spin on her. Some changes to Supergirl in this animation adaptation that we're going to be talking about. But if you have any thoughts in the chat, feel free to share them. Rachel says the trailer for the second part looks more Kara-centric. Maybe we'll see. I'm actually very nervous what they're going to do with Kara now, so we'll see. But if you do have any thoughts about the first movie, Rachel, feel free to drop them in the live chat here. Kenneth or Kenny, we're old friends, Kenny. So Kenny says hasn't seen the Justice League Crisis on Crisis. That is such a long title. Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 yet, but we'll be checking it out on the Blu-ray disc Steelbook next month on February 3rd from Amazon. All right, well, that's good to know they're doing steelbooks of that. I'll have to check that out. I've bought the digital version. Yeah, Brian says hasn't seen it yet either, but never been one to worry about spoilers. We'll definitely be spoiling some stuff, so just be prepared for that. Tevye says hello. And Rachel reminds everybody, you don't have to watch the movie, you just listen to the podcast. That's all you need. Let's see, just to get into a couple of chat things before we get started. I guess I could bring Morgan in if Morgan has thoughts, if Morgan is ready to go. Morgan, I'm just gonna hop into the live chat just to cover some things before we get started.
Sure.
Tevye, I don't know why they are doing Crisis Now in this Tomorrowverse, but they have talked about in some of the interviews that I've seen that they were allowed to do 10 movies with what is called the Tomorrowverse, which is this cast of characters and the storyline that they've developed. So I guess they chose the last 3 of their 10 movies to be this. So that is what that seems.
I assumed it was because they were going to be like, goodbye, Tomorrowverse. See ya.
So they were like, we're going to go out with a bang. And what bigger thing could you do than Crisis on Infinite Earths? So I guess we could go ahead and get started. I need to take this comment off, and we'll get to some more of your live chat comments when we get talking about the movie. But feel free to drop those in there. And I guess we should go ahead and get started because we got a little bit of news. and then we'll really dig into this first part of Crisis in the animated world. So we'll get started here in a second.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because really?
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of 𝙅𝙪𝙨𝙪𝙚. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And we are live and wired on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page to discuss and review Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, the first of a 3-part animated adaptation of the classic comic book event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, Morgan, I'm trying to remember. We've talked about Crisis on and off, but we've never actually read the comic for the podcast, have we? I mean, I've read it before.
I have not read it. And if I had, it would have been for this podcast. So that's how I know we haven't talked about it.
So maybe we should, but we'll talk about that later. Maybe that'll be something that we'll dig into. But so we are going to be talking about this Crisis on Infinite Earths animated adaptation. Very difficult to say. We've also talked about the Crisis version in the Arrowverse, so we've gone through that as well. Some similarities, some differences. So we'll have to dig into what the animated movie did with it. And I've got some comic book things that I can bring into this discussion if you have any questions. So we will broach it from that angle too, from the comic book perspective as well. But before we get into talking about Crisis, we need to get to
the news.
And here it is. According to TVLine.com, The Girls on the Bus, starring Melissa Benoist, will premiere on Max this March, though a precise release date has not yet been set. So just pencil in your calendar March for this, and you'll be ready. The whole month of March, you're gonna set aside. Oh,
could happen at any moment.
You had plans? Not anymore. You gotta wait in front of the TV. It'll be on one of those days. So the comedic drama is inspired by a chapter in Amy 𝙁𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙁.
That seems right.
That seems right. 2018 novel Chasing Hillary, which was based on the author's time covering Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign as a political reporter. In The Girls on the Bus, Supergirl that Benoist plays Sadie McCarthy, a journalist who romanticizes the original Boys on the Bus and who scrapped her whole life for her own shot at covering a presidential campaign for the paper of record. Sadie hits the trail and eventually bonds with 3 female competitors, per the official logline. Despite their differences, these women become a found family with a front row seat to the greatest soap opera in town, the Battle for the White House. So remember, March.
Just sometime it's going to happen. This is not a TV show that I would probably want to watch, but I'll check it out for Melissa Benoist. Maybe if there is a first episode, we could do a pilot pod since we've been catching up with all the Supergirl actors. But this is not one I would choose if Melissa was not in it. But I think she'll probably be great in it. She's used to playing a reporter. She's done that a lot. Yeah.
She's got that experience already. It's so funny because I feel like I might have read this exact same article, and the article kind of goes on to how bizarre the development of this show was. Like, it was originally developed for Netflix, and then Netflix was like, LOL, nah. And then it folded to the CW, and the CW was like, we're imploding. And then so it went from the CW to Max, and now Max is like, we can't wait to premiere this show. Pencil in March on your calendar. And I mean, I feel like things on Max aren't doing great because they keep on like just disappearing things. So, watch it while you can, I guess, on Max is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I did see that it was in development since 2019, so it's been some time.
Could you imagine?
It's been about 4 years. So that'll be something. I'm just not really big into like political stuff. Like I'm not really.
Yeah, to be fair, honestly, I don't think I am either. I haven't even watched like The West Wing. Like I haven't even
Nope.
watched like the big political show that everybody watches. So yeah, this will be kind of a outside of my usual TV watching genres where I like them if like somebody's diving into like a haunted pond or something. Like, more my vibe.
Where they unknowingly murder their father. Yes.
Whoops. Kylie's like, oopsies. Which I'm going to add my own news item, which is that I was clicking around yesterday and I noticed that The Way Home, Kyler Lee's time travel pond show, is back for season 2. And I went like fist pumped in the air. I was like, the pond is back in town.
Side note, I found the end of season 1 to be completely ridiculous and very depressing. But you know what? I'm gonna come back for season 2. I gotta find out where that pond's gonna send them.
They're in like the 1800s now. The dog is immortal. They've all killed.
We might have to do a follow-up to The Way Home.
What if like the pond is like got a taste for like murder now? The pond is, like, just keeps sending her back to like places to, like kill different family members.
At some point, this is a total tangent from what we're talking about. But if I time traveled and found out that I actually was the reason that my dad died,
I think
I'd be like, I'm finished with the time travel here. I don't think I'm gonna do it anymore.
You know what? Maybe I'm bad at this. We can't all be good at everything. Maybe I'm bad at this. Sorry, Papa.
What we're saying is, watch The Way Home. It's a wild, wild time, but Kyler Lee is great in it.
It happens in the 90s, so there's like so many like little chokers and.
So yeah, The Way Home is Kyler Lee's new endeavor, and Girls on the Bus is Melissa Benoist's a long-awaited endeavor that will be coming sometime. We don't know exactly when.
Sometime
we'll be looking out for
March. I see Rachel in the chat mentioned this, which I also read in that article and then forgot promptly. But Talash from Legends of Tomorrow, who played Zari, is also actually in the Girls on the Bus. So there's a Supergirl Legends connection there. So that's fun.
I mean, Arrowverse version 2 is happening on the Girls on the Bus. So
there you go.
That is something to look forward to, a little Supergirl Legends crossover. Well, speaking of big crossover events, I guess we should get to talking about the movie that we gathered to discuss, which is Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. And the IMDb description for this film reads, quote, "The Anti-Monitor, the Monitor's evil counterpart, is released in the DC multiverse and begins to destroy the different Earths that compose it. The Monitor attempts to recruit heroes from across the multiverse, but is murdered," unquote. Which is not, was he murdered in this movie? I don't remember that.
I don't think so. But spoiler alert, I guess I know what's happening in number 2.
This is the description for part 1 for IMDb. I copied and pasted, and then as I was reading it, I was like, no, that did not happen in this.
Wait a minute. You know what? Honestly, anything could have happened in this movie. Anything at all.
Seems right. But yeah, that description, we haven't met the Anti-Monitor yet.
No. We sure
we know
haven't,
we know about the
to the best of
monitor.
our knowledge.
There was a lot of time tripping, as they called it, in this one. So really, maybe it's possible we missed it. But Morgan, I guess just looking at this from a movie in terms of analyzing it as a film,
Sure.
what did you think about the story and the narrative structure? Because this one was pretty timey-wimey. There's a lot of it was not linear. So,
Yeah.
what did you think about that storytelling choice?
I thought this one was a mess. I'm just gonna be honest. I was like, okay, as I started the movie and I was confused, I was like, okay, they're doing that thing where they just drop you right in. They were like really trusting their audience. And then about like 25 minutes in, I was like, I wish they would trust me less. I don't enjoy being confused for like a solid half an hour. Like that's not it's an hour and a half movie. I'm confused for a third of it. It felt like they never really felt like they needed to explain anything. I feel like in a big way, this movie felt like part of a trilogy, in that they were like, we'll get to the explanations and stuff later. Don't worry about it. Like, what, later in the second movie or something? I'm supposed to wait for a whole nother movie to get some sort of explanation, like what is going on. And like I do there were things that worked for me in the movie. I think the Barry and Iris stuff was really good. But yeah, the structure of this movie was all over the place. They were like, it's confusing because like Barry's confused because he's like skipping through time. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also confused. And I watched this because I wanted to enjoy it. I mean, yes, a controversial opinion, I guess, but like I wanted to enjoy and understand the thing that I was watching. And like that didn't really happen for me in this one.
Yeah, it was confusing to me also. I was trying to keep up with it, but at certain points I was confused about how things were connecting. So the first movie that we have seen here, I don't know what happens in part 2 and part 3, but they go immediately to all the worlds are ending, and the end of it is them, I guess, saving the worlds. I guess, did they save the multiverse by the end of this? I was very confused. So
I wasn't even clear on that. I wasn't clear on, they saved something maybe, but did they save everything?
I don't know, and I was trying to go with them because they go to different time periods, and there's different people in different instances. But I was having a hard time following Barry's time tripping through everything. It was maybe they could have put up a little lower third, like, this is where this is. This is what Earth we're on. This is the time period that, Barry is in right now, because it goes back and forth to their wedding, and so it was very difficult to keep up with. And I was trying to make notes, but even still, I was sort of losing it. And I was also immediately confused because it focused so much on the Flash, and
Yeah.
the Flash is a big deal in Crisis, but this is not how Crisis in the comics. I mean, there were some elements in there, but making it a Barry Iris story was immediately confusing, because I was like, this is not, they were not I mean, the Flash, the eyes in Crisis, spoiler alert, but this is not this is not how it's structured. So I was immediately thrown off by how Flash centric it was, and which is fine. I mean, that's totally fine. But then it got to where it was so confusing that I couldn't keep up with it. And so that made me very frustrated. So I would agree, this was a huge mess.
Yeah, I also thought it was like a little bit of a weird choice to be like, and this is when they made the Justice League. I'm like, what when you're exploding everything, that's when you're gonna why bother? Why bother putting the Justice League together at this point? Like, I don't know, guys. Maybe that would have been a little bit more impactful in like a different movie.
Well, they had to form the Justice League, and I'll have to go back and like watch the Tomorrowverse movies leading up to this before part 2, because I don't know if they had actually formed the Justice League in the Tomorrowverse prior to this? Was this like a flashback to a previous movie, or were they having to cram it in here for Crisis because they needed all the superheroes to get together?
So Mind the Gap says in the comments, they use this movie as a way to fill in blanks like we did not see the Justice League form in the last movies.
That answers
They were hinted at coming together in the Justice Society movie,
Gotcha.
but they didn't actually do that, I guess. So they were like, I mean, listen, we waited until the night before the assignment was due, and then like our dog kind of barfed on it, but we were like, we can still make this work.
That actually feels right, because parts of this movie, and we'll get to the Supergirl stuff, felt like they had read the Cliff Notes version of Crisis and just started guessing at who characters were. So that's how it sort of felt to me.
In the chat, it says, question, why even form the Justice League now in this movie? Which was the question I sort of had as well. Is like, there's a lot of stuff, usually moving pieces in Crisis. Like, adding the Justice League forms felt a little bit too much. It's like, the story doesn't need that. That's a big story beat by itself. Maybe we don't do that in Crisis.
I can kind of buy it as a time tripping flashback. Like Barry goes into that like part of his history and he relives that somehow because it's going to give him information about Crisis. I can go with that. That one actually made sense to me. The other ones were like, I don't know what's happening. But the Justice League stuff made sense. And I think you need that in order to have them work as a team to save the multiverse. But some of that was just, I mean, the Iris Barry relationship even was hard to kind of, follow their trajectory. Flash going in and out of things felt somewhat right to Crisis. That seems to happen a lot in the original Crisis event in the comic books, where he's encountering different characters and he's sort of coming in and out of time and he's very frazzled. So that actually, I think, lines up with the comic. But it being so heavily Flash was strange to me. But that's good to know that they had not formed the Justice League prior to this movie. That's actually very interesting that they did cut that corner.
I see Mind the Gap says, in that in that terrible Green Lantern Beware My Power movie, there already was a Justice League, but they never showed them form. So it seems like there was some talk about a Justice League in previous movies, but this was the movie that we actually got to see them form up together.
Yeah, this Green Lantern would not be a movie that Morgan would want to watch because she
I
does
don't
not
care
care
for him.
She does not care for Green Lantern.
Don't care for Green Lantern.
What I found perplexing about the Justice League stuff was that sometimes when they would be in that the big satellite headquarters up in space, there would be multiple versions of them, but then it would be confusing as to who knew who, and because there was a Robin who came to talk to Batman, but it wasn't the Robin he had been connected with. And I was like, what? So they're the same like bad characters, but they're from different worlds, and they don't seem to, like, Batman had no concept of a Robin. Like, I was very confused. And then they do a flashback of Barry meeting Bruce and Dick Grayson. They come over to his house and Dick's going to go play video games with Wally. And I was just so confused by some of that. Even when I understood when the Batman, I guess, of Earth 1 met the 𝙁𝙪𝙾, as they pronounced it, which I had major gripes with. It's Helena.
New pronunciation for me.
Everything that I've ever seen that has Huntress
character named that, even I've never even encountered that pronunciation.
Did you not watch the Birds of Prey TV show? Shame on you, for shame. But I understood the Batman Huntress thing because that's Earth 2, so I can assume that the Helena Wayne or the Helena Wayne was Earth 2, and this other Batman was Batman from Earth 1. But I was having so much trouble with the multiverse characters, trying to figure out who knew who and who was understanding that there were multiverses in any form anyway. Because even the two Supermen, they looked so similar that I couldn't tell which one was from what Earth. In the comic book, there are two distinct Supermen. One of them has like kind of gray hair. He's sort of the Kingdom Come older Superman, so he's very distinct from the sort of the prime Earth 1 Superman. But here they looked almost identical. So I was so confused as to who was who.
It's like the Spider-Man pointing at himself meme. And I was just like, what you what's happening here? Yeah, that I was also confused. Watching this movie made me realize that, like, oh, this is like part of a continuation of these of like multiple of these movies, and you should have apparently watched all of them. Like, I've seen only the couple that we've watched for the podcast.
Legion of Superheroes
The
movie.
Legion
We
of
watched that.
Superheroes
Yep.
movie. So I knew when Dawn Star popped up, I was like, my girl. I'm not happy about that. But but I felt a little out of the loop. I was questioning things like, why isn't Wonder Woman around? Like, why wasn't Wonder Woman in the Justice League? Why was it Vixen? Like,
yeah, they made a big deal of Vixen.
Vixen was all over the place, which, like, good for her. Obviously, I love my girl Vixen because she is related to Amaya from Legends of Tomorrow. So, you know, we go way back. But still, I mean, not a usual inclusion in the Justice League. Like, not like one of the major characters. And then to have no Wonder Woman also made me, like, confused. Is that something I missed from another movie?
There was a Wonder Woman. So there's
she was like an alternate.
Well, that's the crime syndicate, a Superwoman. But there was a Wonder Woman who kissed one of the Supermen.
Yes.
Called him Cow. And so I was like, I guess that's a Wonder Woman and a Superman from another Earth. So I was having to guess at a lot of things, and I didn't like having to guess.
Yeah, that was like kind of my confusion, was like, okay, so there is Wonder Woman. It's like, she does exist, but like, does she not exist in this Earth? Like the Earth that we're spending most of our time on? Because we see her later when they gather up all the heroes and they're like, here's your makeover. Here's your makeover. And then, like you mentioned, there was the Superman who was with Lois from the version of reality we were watching, but then there was also another Superman whose Lois had long since died, who was like, well, Wonder Woman's right there, though.
I think he was supposed to be the older Superman, but he didn't
Was
look
he?
it.
He did. He looks great. His skincare regimen is on point. He's like, listen, it is a 10-step process, but you're going to be thankful later. He just like he starts pulling out products for Clark.
He said something to the effect of like, I bet you're glad to know that your hairline is going to be okay.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
So I assumed he was older. So it was just very confusing to keep up with who was who. And then narratively, I think it was very hard to follow what they were doing. And also, I thought it was so rushed. Like, you have 3 movies. What are the other 2 movies going to be?
Yeah, I started with a lot of questions. I left with a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions the whole way through. I never had less questions, is the amazing thing about this movie.
And the question himself was in it asking questions.
That guy was a real champ. I was like, this guy and me, we understand that nothing makes sense that we're watching. And at least this guy is in this movie being like, what's up?
Still didn't answer his question, so the question still has questions about what's going on.
Still so many questions. I was texting Rebecca as I was watching this, going, Rebecca, I've never been so confused. Rebecca, what is happening?
And I think I wrote back something like, I'm so mad about it.
I knew it was going to be dicey when, before I watched it, you said, interested to see what you think. I was like, uh-oh. And then I was like 20 minutes into the movie, and I was like, it makes sense.
Just an insight into Supergirl Radio. Normally, Morgan and I will talk about like what we're gonna discuss the next week, but we try not to like have a discussion about it before the podcast. We'll usually kind of just watch it on our own, and then we come bring our thoughts. But I know it's going to be something we're going to have hot takes on when both of us like want to talk about it before the podcast.
Exactly. I was like, wait, hold on, real quick. What did I just watch?
So I was like, Morgan's got the same feelings I do, apparently. Okay, I guess we should just get to the real heart of the matter. I think that we both have real issues with, because Brian is also confused in the chat. The question is, Supergirl was Harbinger? And the answer to that, we do have an answer to that. Yes.
Yep.
Supergirl is indeed a harbinger in this version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is where I thought that maybe they just did the Cliff Notes version and they were thumbing through Crisis in the comics, and they just happened to, go on some pages where they saw a blonde lady with some blue and red in her suit, and they were like, oh, that must be Supergirl. Because that's the only reason I can think
Kara.
of why she would be known as Harbinger and acting as Harbinger in this movie. Because spoiler alert, Harbinger is the one who kills the Monitor. She's brainwashed by the Anti-Monitor and she murders the Monitor. So I don't know if that's where they will take Supergirl as Harbinger. But it could happen. We do know from the IMDb description that the Monitor is murdered. So we might see Supergirl murder the Monitor. I don't know at this point. It's hard to determine where they're going to go with this. I guess, Morgan, my questions about this for you are, do you think this is something that they can take liberties with? Because in the comics, Supergirl is not Harbinger. Even in the Arrowverse, Lila, who was married to Diggle, she becomes Harbinger.
That's right.
In the Arrowverse Crisis version. But I personally think that's fine because her name is Lila. Harbinger's name in the comics is Lila. So it made sense to me on the Arrowverse version that Lila would become Harbinger. And she's also kind of, no offense to all the Lila fans out there, but she's kind of a minor character. She's not one of the main leads. And so you can kind of play with that character a little bit and make her more important in a big 5-episode crossover event on TV. But I don't know how I feel about this Supergirl Harbinger thing. I mostly dislike it, but I'm curious what you think about it.
I was mostly confused. So I haven't read the Crisis storyline, as we've established. I have some knowledge of like the broad strokes of like what happens in Crisis. And I watched the Arrowverse Crisis, but even before that, I remember there was like a lot of references to Crisis, like back in the early 2000s, and I would like watch Smallville, and people would discuss like, well, post Crisis, and I would like look up like, what is Crisis? But I am by no means an expert. I haven't read the original comic on which it's based. Even that said, I was like, what? How? Why? That didn't. I'm sure that hasn't. And then I asked Rebecca about it. I was like, why she Harbinger? I was just very confused. It didn't make any sense to me. And then the way that they revealed it was also a little strange. It was like, Dawnstar, hey girl, it's me. I almost fell off of the couch when that happened. I was like, what is happening? Truly, what is happening in this movie?
Yeah, Dawnstar doesn't seem to recognize Supergirl as Harbinger, and so she transforms out of the Harbinger identity and then becomes Supergirl again, and Dawnstar recognizes her as Kara. But at that point, why make her transform into Harbinger? Why is she a separate thing now?
Yeah, I don't know why. That was kind of my thing, is if you're gonna have Supergirl be the person who like collects all the Pokemon or whatever, gets all the superheroes in one place, why couldn't she just do that as Supergirl? Like, exactly what benefit did having like flame hair add to the equation? Because I feel like arguably she knows some of these superheroes. If she popped up and she was like, the world's ending, they would take it more seriously than like some random like fire person who they don't know popping up like randomly in the middle of a wedding. Like, I would take it a little bit more seriously if it was like my pal or like my good friend's cousin, you know? Like, oh, she's legit. Not the fire lady. The fire lady, I'd be like, Ma'am, not now.
The only reason I can think of is that they need someone to be Harbinger. They want to be faithful to the comic in that aspect, that they want a Harbinger because a Harbinger needs to kill the Monitor. And so I guess that's something they need to have that character. But again, they could have just had a Harbinger character that didn't
Yeah.
need to be Supergirl. I appreciate them wanting to give Supergirl more to do, but what she does in the original comic book is enough. She has great scenes with Batgirl. She does a big heroic thing to save Superman. You don't really need to give her more. I think what she does in the original book is enough. So I just thought it was a very, very strange choice. And I'm a little miffed because in the Arrowverse crisis, she doesn't do the thing that she's known for in the comic book version. She doesn't die saving Superman. She they kind of hinted she might do something dangerous, but she doesn't die. And then this one, it's like, well, I don't even know if she's going to do that in this animated version because now she's a totally different character doing totally different things now. So I have no idea what they're doing with Supergirl, and I'm very perplexed about it.
It's strange. They also sort of introduce this concept that Supergirl is Harbinger, and then there's no follow up on it. So it's like, why is she? How is she? When did she? No, any of the any like sort of standard journalistic questions, who, what, when, why, how, none of them are answered in this situation. She just is, and you should accept it, and you should not ask follow-up questions about it. Just made me like, isn't everybody who watches this movie going to be like, what? Why? What? When?
I out loud while watching the movie, I was like, "What?" I like screamed in my TV when Harbinger got revealed as Supergirl. Yeah, I think it's a bad choice. I don't think it's necessary. I think it could have been just a Harbinger character because now if you introduce her as Harbinger, you might as well take her through the whole thread. Have her kill the Monitor, have her be brainwashed, have her do all this stuff. I don't know if they're going to introduce the baby child of one of the Earth's Lex Luthor and Lois Lane because he becomes a
Ooh.
big part of the comic book. Our Harbinger has an interaction with him, and so I don't know if they're going to do all that. And I just wish that somebody would do Crisis with Supergirl the way it was supposed to do it. And I understand that with adaptations, like you can change things a little bit, but I think there's so much that's been changed with this, and there's no excuse. You have 3 movies. You have a potentially 6 hours to do this.
Yeah,
You could take your time with it.
that's kind of like part of the shame of it, I think, is that there have been a lot of sort of on-screen multiverse crisisy kind of things recently, but they're usually like sort of shoved into an existing universe a little bit more, where like the Arrowverse had like a lot of different things it had to hit on. It couldn't be like comic book accurate. And like, I understand that this is coming at the end of this kind of animated cinematic universe, but it feels like because it's animation, they could be a little bit more close to the comics. Like arguably they could be like, they could do a much more comic accurate version of this story, and that doesn't feel like the way it's going.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to be happening now because it feels like they wrapped up a lot of stuff in this first movie, and so now I don't know. I guess part 2 will show us how Kara becomes Harbinger. I guess that's what I'm assuming happens. But I guess on that we'll just have to keep waiting and seeing because we have no idea at this point. I guess we could talk about the other aspect of Supergirl that was included in this movie was her connection to Brainy that is following up on the Legion of Superheroes movie. and the fact that she is seeing that all of these other characters are sort of disintegrating, and they're trying to communicate with the Legion, and they're only able to really communicate. They can't do much in terms of time travel, except for the Flash can't somehow. So I did like that little Kara brainy moment, but the Harbinger stuff was very strange.
Yeah, I see a comment in the chat from Rachel who says, my impression was that because this first part was framed around Barry, the next part would be about Kara and telling the story of how she got to be where she is in part one. I certainly hope that's the case. I could see an argument for that being what they're kind of after, what they're kind of thinking about doing, especially as the movie ends with Kara, watching her and my girl Dawnstar disappear. Dawnstar. And then and then watching Brainy also sort of disappear and disintegrate while he tells her that he loves her.
Yeah.
So yeah, big emotional moment for Kara, and her character right at the end of the movie does seem to be setting up like a big storyline for her in the second movie. I would sure hope that it covers why she decided to like get her flame hair makeover.
Yeah. Well, how did she get brainwashed
What
into thinking
happened?
she was? But it doesn't even seem like she's brainwashed. In the comics, Harbinger is brainwashed to murder the Monitor, and she's sort of half working for the Monitor and half working for the Anti-Monitor. But it seemed like Kara knew what she was doing as Harbinger. So I don't know. I don't know where they're going to take that. But it could be explained in the second part. I guess, were there any other things, Morgan, in terms of the story or the characters that you wanted to bring up that we haven't already talked about?
The one thing I will say is, as confused as I was with this movie, and the answer was very confused. I did like the Barry and Iris stuff. Did I always follow what was happening with it? Like the rest of this movie, the answer is no. But I thought that, like, at least emotionally, it kind of grounded the movie with like this sort of central relationship we get to see when they met. We get to see, unfortunately, Iris's death. I thought that the twist of at the end of the movie, which is that to save Iris, he slows down time so much for just the two of them that they essentially like live a whole life in the like seconds between when the world destroying energy would have come and like destroyed the whole world, allowing them to sort of build up with the help of Amazo,
Who
build up.
doesn't really have anything to do with the comic book story.
Yeah,
But it's fine.
But was actually the MVP of this movie, I think.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that was the only time I felt anything was either Iris and Barry's story or when Amazo was like, I did good. And I was like, yes, you did, little robot. Crying.
He fulfilled his primary function of
did it.
prolonging human life.
He really did. But yeah, I thought that like that concept was pretty cool, and also like very sad, and did leave me more questions. I was like, okay, so like every day they were just like walking past the beam that was getting like a little bit closer for like 50 years, and that seems dark. They're the only ones in the whole world. But I thought that concept at least was interesting. They didn't do a ton with it because it's like not until the end of the movie that you realize like that's what is happening or what has happened. But I thought as a concept, it's like both kind of lovely for this couple and also very dark.
Not until we've just had this conversation did I realize that that's what was happening. So thank you for
Well, they didn't
sharing
explain
that.
it. They didn't explain it very well at all.
You
Rebecca.
caught that and I didn't. I was just kind of like, I guess this is still part of the time tripping stuff. Like, I didn't know, but actually hearing you explain it, I was like, that actually, I could see that happening. So thank you for explaining something I did not understand.
To the best of my understanding of the movie, which is not much, because they wouldn't have had enough. He wouldn't have had enough time to like. They hadn't built his tower yet. finished his
Right.
tower to like contain the energy or whatever, superhero mumbo jumbo they were doing. So instead, when he slowed down the time, he and Iris and Amazo, a very good robot, like built up the tower themselves with all of the many years that they had to figure it out.
Iris had like a tool belt and everything.
Iris was ready. I mean, that heart attack did take her down, but she was before that, she was ready. And that's sort of what happened, is that they sort of existed in this sort of liminal space in the minutes it would have taken that wave to destroy everything. For them, it was, 50 or, something years, but for everybody else, it was only a couple of minutes. And they managed to build up that tower and add Amazo in there to basically save the day. That was my understanding, but it wasn't explained, I don't think, in a very clear way at all.
Yeah, but I think you got it though. I think you understood that a lot better than I did. I did think that in terms of the filmmaking aspect of it, I think one of the things that really sticks out to me visually is when Amazo does die. I guess if you say that for a robot, he gets sort of taken apart a little bit. What I did like was Barry sort of falls to the ground and he faces Amazo. And I liked the way the composition was on that, where he was sort of coming to face with Amazo and what they did together. So I did think that that was very emotional and well done and filmmaking wise. But it was a lot to take in because there was like two different Amazo fights, and I was kind of confused as to why Amazo was even in this story. So it was a lot, but Amazo did have I guess an arc in some way. If you were going to give any character, like, I don't know that really, I guess Barry and Iris have arcs in this, but not a lot. So there was an emotional touch point with not only Barry and Iris, but also with Barry and Amazo as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, ironically enough, Amazo arguably has the best and most logical, like most linear character arc in this movie. Amazo, the robot. It's like everybody else is sort of all over the place. We just kind of, because of Barry just sort of dipping in and out at various points in people's lives, like it's hard to track where anybody is, like in time, emotionally, anything like that. But Amazo is pretty easy. It's like, okay, he was being used for evil by Lex Luthor and manipulated, and then he saved some people, and then he was like, he came back around, he helped them build the thing, and then he gave up his life to fulfill his prime directive. And in that moment before he died, he understood that he saved people's lives. Beautiful. No notes. 2 chef's kisses for Amazo. Everybody else's story was all over truly all over the place. Batman, I don't know, but Amazo, he had a great character arc.
Yeah, so I think that one, good job, well done.
Yeah, I mean, if you would ask me who's gonna have the best character arc in the Crisis movie, Amazo wouldn't have been the first one that I would have guessed, but you live and you learn.
So I guess that is their a writer's choice, that they have depicted Amazo in such a way that you cheer for him. I guess we could talk about some other characters that we briefly mentioned, but I'm curious about your thoughts on them. So the crime syndicate. We get introduced to the Earth 3 bad guy version of the Justice League. So we get characters like Ultraman, who is this cussing, doesn't care version of Superman who just wants to punch a bunch of stuff. And we get Power Ring and Owlman, and then Johnny Quick, who is the Flash version, and we also get Superwoman, who is the evil version of Wonder Woman. So I was curious, what did you think about the crime syndicate? Because they do have a a big story at the beginning of the Crisis comic book story. Earth 3 does get destroyed. So that was actually pretty accurate for the movie depicting this comic book event. So what did you think about the crime syndicate?
I always think it's kind of fun when we see like the evil version of characters. So honestly, I kind of liked them. I was like, oh yeah, the crime syndicate. I also like that the evil Superman had like he was like wearing eyeliner. I don't I don't know why. It's just it was just kind of personally funny to me. It's like he's like I'm dark and edgy. It's like he's like an emo kid from 2005. It's like you're never gonna understand me, mom. I thought that the evil Flash was actually like pretty funny. I like that their banter back and forth where he was like, "You're slowing me down," and then when they're running, uh, base it seems like maybe the reason that Barry manages to outrun the Earth ending in in that Earth is because he got taken out by a car. And therefore, our Barry gets all of the Speed Force. So I thought that that was kind of interesting too. I thought there was kind of poignant moments where they realized that like the world is ending and they might as well try to
Yeah.
try to defend it because it's like the only world they have. But I just like that they're mostly all awful.
Yeah, that is the fun of having an evil Justice League is to see what it would be like if they all went bad. I did think it was interesting that they had become the quote worldwide absolute government. These were the governing authorities of the entire world.
Yes.
I guess if you had the Justice League go bad, who would oppose them?
Who could oppose them, really?
So I guess they would be the worldwide absolute government in that instance.
I see Rachel has a good question I wanted to also ask you in the chat. Rachel says, "Why is Wonder Woman in the crimes? Why is Superwoman in the crime syndicate Wonder Woman's name when regular Superwoman is usually Lucy or Lois Lane?"
My guess is that Superwoman comes later. So I don't know that Superwoman. I don't know if Superwoman. Somebody have to look this up, but Superwoman I think is most prominently depicted in the Sterling Gates Supergirl run. So that's when the Lucy and the Lois Lane connection comes in. So if there is a
Ah.
Superwoman mentioned when like Lois Lane becomes super, maybe it happened in some Silver Age or some early Golden Age stuff, but I don't think it really stuck around until the Sterling Gates run when Lucy Lane became Superwoman. So my guess is that when the crime syndicate was created, which would have been probably much earlier than that crime syndicate.
So Brian in the chat says, "I think that's a post-crisis thing. I don't think they ever had names until the 1990s."
So the Crime Syndicate of America, first issue was August 1964, Justice League of America number 29. So they've been around for a long time. Let's see, Superwoman, when did she was her first appearance was August 1964, Justice League of America number 29. So my guess is that the Superwoman in the Crime Syndicate was created much earlier than the Superwoman of Lucy Lane and the Sterling Gates run. So that's my only explanation and answer to that question. And I think Superwoman, as I read it in the comic book, the Crisis comic book, it was Super Dash Woman. But in some of these internet entries, it's Superwoman No Dash, which I think is really interesting. That's the old Batman or Bat-Man. So that's very confusing to see how people write it out. I guess another thing that we could talk about, another one of my many questions that I had, Morgan, who is this homeless man who keeps popping up around Barry Allen? He has a great beard. And
Great
I really
beard.
love his hoodie, but
Crushing it.
what is this guy's deal?
Yeah, I had many questions about this guy. I really thought that the movie was going to end with a reveal of some kind.
Oh,
Like,
wouldn't that be something?
who is he? Because I thought at first, again, because I haven't read as much of the comics, I don't have like an encyclopedic knowledge of things. I was like, oh, I'm sure the hardcore comics people who know all this stuff, I'm sure they're watching and they know exactly who this guy is. And then I was texting with you and you were like, who is that guy with the beard? And I was like, okay, so not just me.
No, not
just me. Yeah, I thought it was strange that they never revealed who he was. I mean, there are probably hints, but I didn't pick any of them up. Yeah, I thought it was a strange choice to have this sort of prominent character sort of dipping in and out of the narrative and to never reveal who he is. And again, it's part of the thing where this movie is like, it's a movie, but it's also just a part of a larger story. So it doesn't feel honestly, it doesn't feel like a full finished film to me. It's like if you just watched this and then skipped off on your merry way, you would not have enough of the story, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think given his magic, I think he might be John Constantine. Maybe
Ah.
it looked like Constantine, like occultic sort of uh evil magic to me. So I don't know a lot about Constantine, but that sort of resembles a John Constantine. But I was also really confused because he kept popping up in different places and he talked about how Barry was supposed to bear witness. And that to me felt like Pariah in the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic book story. So I don't know if he is used as John Constantine because that's what they have in the Tomorrowverse, but they're using him in that Pariah um, sort of place setting. They're using him as the Pariah-esque character, to fulfill that part of the story. But then I was also like, is he somehow the Spectre? Because the Spectre comes into play with some things, and so I was very confused. I even sort of looked up the character. Let me see. Orion, Arion, from the original comic, as I was sort of going back through the comic in preparation for our discussion this week. I was like, could it be him? So I don't know if he is like Constantine, but also fulfilling different character positions in the story. I'm not really sure, but I wish that they had revealed him at some point because they're dropping in these weird things and then they're not telling us who these people are, what they're doing, and it's even to me, it's very confusing.
I see a comment in the chat from Mind the Gap who says, and I'm gonna butcher this, Apocalypse War.
Yep.
Ends with Constantine telling Flash his only way to save the Earth after Darkseid's invasion was doing a flashpoint on purpose. So, is that is it supposed to be a thing where it connects to that movie?
Could be. That's good to know. I definitely need to catch up on some of these Tomorrowverse movies.
Yeah.
But it would make sense if it was Constantine just visually. But it is it's not some like Constantine. I cannot remember. I have to go back through it, but I don't remember him having that connection to the storyline. Constantine is in Crisis, but the character that's sort of going around when all the tragedy is happening is this character known as Pariah. Pariah shows up in the Arrowverse version of Crisis. He's one of the Welleses. I forget which one he is, but he becomes Pariah. So that is I just thought it was weird that there was it to me. It's like I think we talked about this briefly earlier, but like this animated version, they could do whatever they wanted. They could bring in these characters, and even if they hadn't been previously established, like Harbinger or Pariah, they could bring them in, and I don't think anybody would miss a beat. You could just bring in these characters like they did in the Crisis comic book. Like, oh, there are these people who just happen to show up. I would have bought it. So I don't know why they ended up doing it this way. Electra WWF and Tevye also in the chat is reminding me that Nash Wells is who becomes Pariah. He's one of the many Wellses.
One of the many, many Wells.
So he did fulfill that part of the Crisis story on TV. I think there were some questions by some folks in the chat about Psychopirate. So Psychopirate does appear in the original comic book story, and he is in this version. He's not in the Arrowverse Crisis, but he is here in this Tomorrowverse Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. Just briefly, he gets his suit, but he doesn't really do much as of yet. But Psychopirate is a big character in the story. He is able to, using his Medusa mask, he's able to manipulate people's emotions. So he can make people fear, he can make people laugh, he can make people happy, sad, scared, anxious, whatever it is. He can tamper with your emotions. So I'm guessing Psychopirate in parts 2 or 3 will become much more important on down the line.
I was wondering who he was. I was like, who is this, theater man?
So he is one of the characters, and I guess this is something actually we could also discuss. He is one of the 2 characters who uses this fabricator machine where anything you think of in terms of a clothing, you can walk into this machine and the machine will just magically give you a costume of sorts. So it's Psychopirate and Dr. Light who get their magical transformations. So Morgan, did you have any thoughts about being able, would you want to walk into a fabricator and be able to create your own designs that you have in your head?
Oh my God, my closet would be so clean if that was the case. If I just had a fabricator, I would be so minimalistic. I just think it's really funny that they were like, anything you can imagine. And like, they imagined like the weirdest outfits you can imagine. It's like, I want like a weird mask on my face. And like, I want the colors to kind of clash a little bit. One guy was like, I really love the theater Psychopirate. Like, I don't know. I thought that part was pretty funny.
And Dr. Light seemed to not like her suit.
She didn't seem to like her outfit, which I felt like, I was like, wait, I thought it was like what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Or like what kind of outfit they wanted. And she was like, ew, all right.
Yeah, I think the fabricator just forced it upon her.
I think the fabricator was like, you like it, right? You like it.
New Rachel says, I thought Kara would use that machine to get her old suit back. I didn't see one. So we'll see if Supergirl gets a suit, what would it look like? Would it look like the one from Crisis? I do not know. Would she wear a headband? Ooh. I don't know, because the Supergirl in Crisis is wearing the headband of her people. It's supposed to represent the Kryptonian people in the comic book version of the story. So yeah, characters are on the satellite using this fabricator machine to be able to change their appearance.
Electra in the chat says the monitor is just forcing people to try out his latest fashion ideas. I love the idea that the monitor is like, it's what you want to wear. So when you walk in, it's going to be like what you like. And then they're like, I hate this. And he's like, do you hate it or do you love it? Right? You love it, right? You would say it was like a bold sartorial choice. Calm down, the monitor. Let people live.
Yeah, he's tricking them into going in there because otherwise they probably wouldn't do it. But if he says, no, this is totally your choice, they're gonna do it.
He's like, it's from my spring collection. Psychopirate by the monitor.
Now that would be a great part 2.
Listen, I would sign up for that.
Yeah, so Mind the Gap says the monitor is an aspiring fashion designer. So we'll see if anybody else uses this fabricator machine. I think this is a great addition to the DC Comics mythos.
I love it.
I'm okay with this playing with the liberties of making Crisis your own. So that I did enjoy.
I hope the Fabricator is the main robot character in the second movie. I hope the Fabricator goes through like a really emotional character arc when no one else does in the movie.
I hope he has a big moment. Like they all have to like change their suits into some unified maybe thing so that they can all be part of a team, and he has to figure out what that suit is going to look like. I hope he gets some big moment in part 2.
I'm pulling for him.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would say in terms of the story, there was some dialogue that stuck out to me that I thought was really interesting. And I guess I should have mentioned this when we were talking about Barry and Iris and them slowing down time so that they could spend time together. But Superwoman asks Barry Allen, "How would you like to die, Speedster?" And he responds, "Old age." And I thought that was a great line of dialogue. I know I've kind of not been real pleased with the storytelling here, but I did like that exchange in dialogue for what they were talking about, because it wasn't like how you want to die in terms of like some gruesome death. He just wanted to live a long life and be with Iris. So I thought that was really good. I guess the only I'm trying to go through my notes to find out things that we haven't mentioned yet.
And I'm going through the chat. I started some questions. I see one that says, why did Spectre blame Barry Allen for the crisis?
Let's see. So the Spectre,
I'm also not clear. Somebody does blame him for something at one point, and I was like, what did he do?
So what I wrote down about the Spectre, and this is a good segue because I was wanting to talk about the Spectre. He says that he is the wrath of God, and I immediately went, "Oh, so there's a God in this universe. That's interesting. I would like to know more about that." Then he says that Barry bears responsibility for what has happened. Don't know what that's about.
In what way? How?
Maybe it's because Barry was selfish and he took all that time with Iris. I don't really know. And then he says that the Speed Force will grant Barry farewells when the time comes. So it does seem to hint that possibly that Barry is to blame for what is happening. And so that's why he will eventually have to die to sort of pay for his sins, metaphorically, I guess. And so before he dies, the Speed Force will allow him to say goodbye to people he cares about. So that's, to me, I thought that was foreshadowing his death, but I don't even know anymore because of Supergirl's Harbinger. Is she going to die? Because that's the big thing about Supergirl in Crisis. I don't know if that's going to happen. If Supergirl doesn't die, is the Flash going to die? I don't know what's going to happen in this story. So they're really keeping me on my toes just from being very confusing.
Yeah.
So no, we don't know the answer to that. We just know that he bears responsibility for what has happened.
Yeah, it was I was just overall confused. So I do remember that somebody, saying that he was responsible for something, and I was like, in what way? But I guess we will find that out in a future movie. So
yeah, I guess we'll see what Barry has to do in order to bear that responsibility and say farewell to the people he is very close to.
I saw
yes.
Mind the Gap had a theory, which is if, and it's a big if, the Apocalypse War ending started the Tomorrowverse, then Constantine and Flash are being punished for changing the universe.
Oh, interesting.
Sure. I
Well,
mean,
I would blame him for it too then.
then it would be his fault pretty directly.
And for Constantine to be coming back to the Flash, if he is the bearded homeless man, I guess that would make sense. So what is this movie that we need? Apocalypse War.
Apparently we need to watch
this.
Apocalypse War because I think we missed like most of the plot here if they are indeed connected together, which Mind the Gap isn't even sure of, by the way. I think that's important to note. If this is the case.
Like giving us information, but just maybe it's a reach. I don't
It
know.
could be wrong, but it could be wrong.
It could be wrong.
It could be wrong. How could we know? How could we watch a movie and understand it?
So, I don't know if that'll be a regular Supergirl Radio episode, or maybe we do that as we need to do a quarterly review.
We do. Maybe it's kind of homework we need to do anyway. So
maybe that's a future Supergirl Radio Patreon plug patreon.com/Supergirl Radio if you want to hang out with us for that. Let's see. Yeah, I guess if we don't have any more comments, I know a lot of people, the chat's really hopping because everybody is
chat is
really
really
trying
hopping.
to figure out what's going
I
on.
appreciate that the chat seems not as confused as me about this movie, but more confused than I thought. I thought I was watching this movie and I was like, you know what? My lack of encyclopedic comic knowledge bites me again because I have no idea what's going on. And it's good to see so many questions like, where is this guy? What is happening? Why?
But the chat is also giving us some leads about what we need to watch and be prepared for.
Furiously scribbling down notes. I'm ready.
I guess the only other thing that I wanted to mention that's very, very minor, but a character that I love in the comic book version, and I guess maybe next time I'll bring like comic book stuff of him, but there's a character in DC Comics known as Uncle Sam, and he looks just like Uncle Sam from the American propaganda stuff. But I saw him in the movie and I was like, they put Uncle Sam in there. So it was kind of fun to see some of these sort of minor characters that appear in Crisis. Some of them were sort of just hanging around talking to each other. So I saw you in there, Uncle Sam. I was very excited about that. So that did bring a bright spot to my viewing experience for this one.
I was trying to like look in the background in all those big group shots where they're all kind of milling around to see if I could like catch people, if I could like, oh wait, who's that? But they did not pan long enough on a lot of them where I'd get like a little glimpse of a character and I'd be like, oh, I think I know. Nope, gone.
Yeah. I think I saw like Metamorpho at one point. I think Black Canary was one of those characters. I think she's the one who like touched Barry's face. I guess that was supposed to be Black Canary. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, there were some of them where it was where I was like, I almost think I know who that is, but I feel like I'm wrong.
So they did have a lot of characters that they were trying to include in this version of Crisis. So the only other thing I wanted to ask you about is the just to see what your thoughts were. There's a shot of two possibly prehistoric men on a beach that the Flash sort of time trips into. What were your guesses on what that was about?
I truly had no idea what was happening there.
The only thing I can think of is that one of them, I guess, there was like it looked like somebody had enslaved another person, and it looked like the person in the chain was maybe the Monitor, maybe, and the person above him in power might have been the Anti-Monitor. Like at the beginning of all of this is what I was guessing.
Yeah, that is as good a guess as any. My guess was what? I was like, wait, is it the Man in Black from Lost and his brother?
I'd be really excited about that.
Oh my God, everything's a bottle. I was so confused. I was like, we're on an island. There's like this guy with a beard. What are we? Are we in caveman times? Like, what's happening? And then I got no context. So I had no idea. But the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor seems like a very solid guess.
Now I'm going to be disappointed there's no smoke monster.
I know. Part 2. Listen, part 2, baby.
Part 2 could be anything. But we don't know.
At this point, it really could be anything.
So I'm wondering if part 2 will introduce us to how the Monitor and the because I don't know that we know about the Anti-Monitor yet.
I don't think so. I don't.
We know about the big wave that's killing all the Earths, but I don't know that we know that there is a being behind it yet.
Yeah, I don't think that they established that. I was like waiting around for something with the anti-monitor to pop up, and I don't believe it did in this movie. So I don't feel like you're supposed to know that that's
Okay.
part of the story.
So I have an update from the chat. And
Okay.
this almost makes it worse.
Okay.
Mind the Gap, and even I see it. Tevia
Oh,
in the chat
no.
says those guys who were one was in chains were from Justice League War World, and I think one of them was Batman.
How much homework do we have to do to watch this movie?
So
this is why
okay,
people complain about the Marvel movies, and I'm finally understanding it. Like, I finally get it. I'm like, okay, wait, how many movies did I have to watch this one single movie?
So why put that in there at all?
Yeah, I don't.
Why do you need that?
I feel like it's good. I thought it was like, oh, this is definitely gonna be a big plot point in the next one. But if it turns out to just be like a throwaway, I'm gonna be so mad.
That makes it so much worse for me, because I thought if it was the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, it would be like a tease to seeing the origin story, and I would understand that. But if it's just like something that happened in some other movie, that's disappointing, actually.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
mean,
it worse.
I have to assume that it's going to connect in some way to this series of films. I have to assume that, right?
Oh, yikes. Well, okay. Well, thank you, chat, for filling us in. So we got to watch Apocalypse War. We got to watch War World. So we've got a list of movies that we got to watch now. So we've got homework to do, and eventually we'll get to the Crisis comic book story and get Morgan to read that.
CD Cube said the difference between the DC, I guess these animated movies, the Marvel movies, is that in the Marvel movies they made a series in which you can watch one episode that tells you everything you need to know in order to watch it. I would agree that, like, at least the Marvel movies are kind of cognizant that sometimes people don't watch all of them. And so there is, a little bit of a clunky exposition where they're like, really? Like last year when we defeated, Green Goblin? And you're like, okay, last year they defeated Green Goblin, ready to go into the story. This one, they're just like, yeah, you've watched and taken notes on the last 5 movies, correct? This movie is still not going to be understandable.
They just dropped something in from another movie and did not explain who those people were at all.
That's on us, Rebecca. We didn't watch War World.
You can't sell this as Crisis, because the homework for this is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Not the 7 movies that have come before this. The homework is Crisis.
Because it feels like the point of Crisis is like there's a bunch of different worlds and wacky stuff is happening in some of them. And then like we're going to condense, and they're all going to disappear, and like we're going to condense them all. So it feels like Crisis should be like a pretty easy entry point for somebody who, say, hasn't been watching 10 plus animated movies to just jump in and be like, okay, I bet I can understand what's happening, but you would be wrong.
So that is disappointing. Mark in the chat says there's a special feature attached to the film that says they actually plan the whole Tomorrowverse to culminate in Crisis. Well, we got to start from movie 1. We got to go all the way back.
No. Oh my God. I also see Andy said, I can confirm that is Constantine. I interviewed him for Screen Rant and we talked about it. He even said in the script it was just homeless man.
Oh my gosh. Even in the script, it didn't explain.
Even in the it's like, even in the script, I had no idea. Oh my God.
I don't want to be too complainy, but this was very difficult to watch.
It was.
As someone who has not come into the Tomorrowverse really understanding and having done all the homework.
Mark does make a good point, which is that the homework for the original Crisis was like 100 tie-in issues. So yeah, I guess it's always confusing, but this one was especially confusing for me personally.
Well, the original Crisis comic is like on Comixology or my Kindle, however we're doing this now. It's like 359 pages. It's a long story.
Yeah.
So I feel like having read almost 400 pages of a comic should prepare me for the adaptation of said comic. But
But
no,
no.
I have to watch 7 other movies before
But
I get here.
But once you watch those other 7 movies, you'll know as much as the people who were kind of confused in our chat. I could be wrong, but it does seem like even some people who have watched some of those movies are like, I'm not real clear about
I
it.
guess. I
Maybe?
don't know. I mean, we're trying here. Yeah. So I guess let's do you have anything else before we move on to overall thoughts about part 1?
I'm just so confused.
That is the overall thought. I think the animation was pretty good. It's visually appealing to my eye. It's not bad to look at. I think some of the effects with the Earths being destroyed, I think were pretty good. It was fun to see all the comic book characters. And there was some emotional there were a few emotional moments that I thought were good. But most of it was confusing and maddening because especially for Supergirl, this is a big deal for Supergirl. It's one of the biggest stories in her comic book history, and it feels like they're not even attempting to honor that. I mean, I tell you, there's a great scene in the original Crisis comic where Supergirl's talking to Batgirl, and Batgirl is like, "Ugh, I'm a puny human." I'm paraphrasing all this. Like, I don't have superpowers. What can I do with this world-ending event? And Supergirl gives her these really great, encouraging words and lifts Batgirl up a little bit. And it's great because spoiler alert, when Supergirl dies, Batgirl gives Supergirl's eulogy. And so it's this great little arc that they have as friends. And of course, Supergirl has this big moment where she saves Superman and does it at her own peril. And that is enough for me as a Supergirl fan to have that be what's depicted. But here they've chosen to do something that I have no idea why they chose to do this. So I think just from a Supergirl point of view, that was enough to make me go, okay, no on this. But then everything else was just so confusing. The narrative structure was hard to follow. I didn't know who was who, where they were, what they were doing. It was not handled as well as I was hoping it would be.
Yeah, I think I was just overall just very, very confused with what was happening. I know that there's usually like a lot of moving pieces in like a crisis story, and it kind of needs you to know a little bit about the universe, but this felt like taking sort of what crisis, some of the challenges of crisis, and then like amping them up to 100. Like the movie made made the structure incomprehensible on purpose. Like I mentioned, there was some good stuff that I liked. I liked the Barry and Iris stuff. I liked Amazo's beautiful character arc. It was nice to see Supergirl when she popped up, even though she had a weird role that she's never had in the comics.
Is she even Supergirl? Like, I have questions.
I don't know. Maybe. Oh my god, I don't know. Like the animation looked good. But yeah, this one was just a puzzler. This one was a puzzler for me.
I was even puzzled at the opening credits because the only one mentioned in the opening credits was Matt Bomer.
Yes.
None of the other
Thank
none
you.
of the other actors were mentioned. And I was like,
I spent a lot of time
weird.
Googling who did the voices for what. So on the opening credits, I was like, Matt Bomer. I was like, oh, cool. I can't wait to see who else is in this. Just Matt Bomer then? I kept, it's so funny that you brought this up because Mike watched that. My husband watched this with me and he was like, it's fine. I was like, it's not fine. They only credited one person. Why would they do
weird.
that? Like, I feel like it set me up from the first moment of this movie to be like confused and aggravated. Or I was like, why would you just credit one actor? There's like many voice actors in this thing.
Which is such a disappointment because A, you're not crediting the other actors, and B, you're ruining to me the actual good opening titles and the closing credits with the effects of like the cool like effects of like things deteriorating and sort of fizzling out. I thought all of that was so cool looking, and then I got mad that the credit was so short. Like visually it was really cool and on theme, but I thought that was so strange. So even in something like that where it's it's not behaving in a way that, I guess, as long as it's okay with the Actors Guild that they do that, fine, take those liberties or whatever. But I'm pretty sure you have to put people in there.
Yeah,
I
it felt like I was like, "Is this not like a union thing?" Like, don't you need to like properly credit the like all of the actors? Like, as much as I love Matt Bomer, and I do,
Yes, he's great.
such a beautiful man. But why just him? Like, there's more characters than just the Flash in this movie. I don't get it.
So there are a lot of very confusing things about this adaptation. So.
Also, I wanna bring up a comment from Andy in the chat, that says, in the interview he did with Nolan North, who played Constantine in this movie, he said he got told in the middle of recording his lines that it was Constantine.
Feels like something you would need to know.
Feels like that would be important to your performance. And he says it was strange. He only had homeless man listed in the script, but even Nolan was suspecting he was playing Constantine. So even the poor actor had to be like reading between the lines, like
And
trying to
Constantine
figure out what he was doing.
Constantine is a very specific kind of character too. Like, it
Yes.
seems like playing Constantine versus just playing a homeless man is going to be different, I think.
You would feel like you would maybe want to know if you're playing kind of a more iconic character that has an established personality, but that's just me.
Oh man. Well, I guess this is the first part. Maybe more is to come. That will be exciting, and we'll have more information for us as viewers. In the meantime, whenever part 2 hits, we'll try to do some homework and try to catch up on the Tomorrowverse and make sure that we've done our due diligence before we get to part 2.
Do we know when part 2 is coming out?
No idea. It's
cool. Is it sometime in March?
It's not even like Girls on the Bus, which is like maybe sometime in March.
Set aside March for this.
Part 2 has, as far as I know, maybe some people in the chat know, but as far as I could see, there was no release date for part 2 as of yet.
Okay, so we're just going to be in suspense for question mark, some amount of time.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. But I guess this will give us some time to really dig into the Tomorrowverse. We'll have to figure out with Supergirl Radio how we would like to do that, because we can maybe do it several different ways. So
we have a lot of homework to do.
We'll brainstorm about
see
that.
if part 2, after we've done the homework, we'll see if part 2 is more comprehensible to us.
Tevya in the chat says there was a trailer for Crisis Part 2. So we do have a trailer. It just, at the end of the trailer, I thought there would be like a coming in February 2024, and it did say that as far as I could see. So, so I guess
sometime soon
we'll get an update, I guess, at some point when that will happen. I assume they would release this in some fashionable order, so that like this one comes out, and then maybe in a couple of months part 2 comes out, and then in a couple of months part 3. I don't know. Hopefully it's not like 2 years from now. Hopefully it's like within the same year, is my hope. So, okay, well, I guess we have talked as much as we can about part 1 and our feelings about it, but maybe we should make some snap judgments about it. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Before we get to a snap judgment, I have an important fun fact. From Andy, for any Pretty Little Liars fans in here, which obviously I am one, and I'm sure you have dozens, at least 2 or 3 among our listeners. Spencer's father is John Constantine, Superman, Green Lantern, and Superboy. Let that sink in. So he has done quite a lot of voices in the DC animated universe. I believe the actor's name is Nolan North.
Okay. Yeah. But he's not Superman in this Crisis on Infinite Earths
No,
program. That's
on
Darren
this one
Criss.
he was Constantine, it turned out, halfway through his performance.
He was
He
almost
found
man for
out.
part of it.
He got to discover along with the rest of us. Getting to snap judgments. If you had to work with a member of the crime syndicate to save the world, who would you rather be partnered up with? Superwoman or Ultraman?
So we got Superwoman with the lasso of submission, not the lasso of truth. And then we have Ultraman who's cussing and punching the big energy wave thingies. I guess I would maybe go with Ultraman. At least he seemed like kind of punk rock. I enjoyed that. Superwoman was a little scary. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, I don't like the way she's talking about submission with that. I don't care for that. I don't like what she's doing with that lasso. She kind of scared me a little bit. So Ultraman, at least he was kind of like, whatever. I'm not here to save the world. I'm just gonna punch things. He at least seemed like he had a little bit of a fun personality if you really wanted to like party with him, I guess. but Superwoman, she's a little too intense for me. So I'm gonna go Ultraman on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. That you make some really strong points. I'm gonna go in the opposite direction. I'm gonna go Superwoman.
Oh,
She's got like kind of like a fun like goth girl vibes, and I feel like listen, once we get past all of the like trying to kill people, I feel like we could take like a fun little weekend trip to Salem and like adopt a black cat and like I don't know, like read each other's tarot cards, you know. Halloween spooky vibes all the time, that kind of stuff. I could fix her. I could change her. We'd be best friends.
I guess if you could get past her calling you an idiot and taking you to the Hall of Crime, I guess you'd be fine.
Yeah, listen, is she nice right now? No, but is she going to be really fun to gossip with later? Absolutely. She's going to come up with the meanest nicknames for people that you don't like.
She's got a burn book for
yes, she definitely has a burn book. She's just like flipping through it.
Okay.
So yes, I realize that there is one more.
We have one more because this one I feel very strongly about. So
this is important.
Discuss it.
This is an important one. Should it be pronounced Helena or Helena?
Helena or Helena?
Oh yes, Helena or Helena.
Yeah, I'm Helena all the way. I think if you're gonna especially do like Earth 2 Huntress, it has to be Helena. That's just my feeling on it, but I just was very surprised they went with the Helena route on this one.
Yeah, I gotta go Helena too. That's usually how I've heard it pronounced in all of the different various things. So it felt weird that they were pronouncing it a different way.
Maybe well, it seemed like it was supposed to be the Earth 2 Huntress because she was the daughter of Catwoman as well. That's typically Earth 2 Huntress. But in my head, I'm just going to assume it's like some other Earth where on that Earth she pronounces it Helena.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just go with that. I should mention if we go back to Superwoman, New Rachel says her shoulders were out.
You know what? This is what I was obviously. This is what I was vibing with. She just seems so powerful, you know. If it's good enough for Lena Luthor, it's good enough for me. She even has kind of a Lena Luthor. Oh no, I'm seeing it now. I understand why I like her. She's got her Lena Luthor vibe. She kind of looks like they were drawing off of a picture of Katie McGraw.
Yeah. So if you're new to Supergirl Radio, Lena Luthor on Supergirl, the TV show, got her powers from her many dresses that she had, strapless gowns that she would have where her shoulders would be out. So that is
that was when she was most powerful. That was when she was really in charge.
Yes.
Is when she had all of her shoulders out in the middle of a work day.
So I guess that is going to do it for this round of Snap Judgments. Thank you for helping me land on a pronunciation of Earth 2 Huntress. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. All right, well, I guess we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and some DCTV podcast plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DCTV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DCTV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Hello, and thank you for calling the DCTV Podcast Hotline. Please listen carefully as some of our menu options have changed. Supergirl Radio? Press 1. The Flash Podcast? Press 2. Legends of Tomorrow Podcast? Press 3. The Lithuanian Room? Press 4. DC on HBO Max Podcast? Press 5. Stargirl Podcast? Press 6. Superman and Lois Radio? Press 7. Green Lantern Podcast? Press 8. The Sandman Podcast? Press 9. Justice League Dark Podcast? Press 10. DC After Dark? Press 11. For all other inquiries, please stay on the line and the next available agent will be with you shortly.
I am going to update those plugs. I think I'm going to do that this weekend. We're going to do a temporary plug just to update things so that we're not so out of date anymore. Also, before we get to the TeePublic store, because I really want people to know about what's in the TeePublic store, and it looks like Bunsen does too.
Bunsen, that's all he wants.
We should get to a live chat comment from Aaron that we didn't get to. Where Aaron says one of the Supergirl writers, Katie Rose Rogers, just released a short story episode of a podcast. I guess is the podcast called Unlike-Minded? And that episode is narrated by Katie McGrath. So speaking of Superwoman looking like Katie McGrath, we've got a narration from her.
Ooh, I'll have to check out that podcast. For some reason, I saw some of this going around on Twitter the other day, and I was like, oh, is it like an audiobook? I don't really have time for that. But if it was like a podcast episode, I could do that for sure.
That could be fun.
Bunsen is excited about it. He loves the idea. He doesn't want to be. He wants to be adjacent to the camera, but not
not shy this
right
week
on the camera this week. Oh, buddy. All
right. Well, we will try to find that podcast episode and a link to it. And I'll also try to find Andy's. Andy, if you're still watching, I'll also maybe bug him later to get his interviews that we can also share. That are apparently very needed information in watching.
Very, very helpful. No, buddy. No, you can't have the wire. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Say hi, Bunsen. Okay. Bunsen said, it's time for the TeePublic store plug, Morgan. He's like, I'm here every week now. I know what this is all about.
I know the way these things are run.
I like that we didn't update it from last week because it says
oh no,
but it is still true because we have talked about cats in this episode. It just happens to be Bunsen that we talked about.
I forgot to update that from our 9 Kittens of Christmas episode. So I guess we could tease some Crisis merch though.
Yes,
specifically for this episode.
Did you like a lot of the characters in it? Did you like just the concept of Crisis? Well, guess what? You can get all kinds of merch in our DC TV podcast TeePublic store that we would love to suggest to you.
Yeah, we have some really cool Crisis merch in the DC TV podcast TeePublic store, designed, I should say, by the great at Comic Girl. So if you follow Sarah on Twitter or Instagram, or you look at her blog, Comic Girl has designed some Crisis merch that we have in our store. We have hoodies, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, we have phone cases. It's really clever. So I think if you are interested in Crisis and you want some to represent your love for Crisis in a really fun way, check out Sarah Luber's designs in the TeePublic store. And we would like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Ann Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Abby, Miriam, Nicole, Brian, Ethan, Danny, Majuba, Zachary, Annie, and Rachel. And if you would like to become a Legion of Super sponsor, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. We've done a lot of things recently. We've done some pilot pods, talked about Static Shock, and recently we tried out the StreamYard feature where you can now stream live stream through StreamYard to Instagram.
It went great.
It was weird.
It was real weird. Some of you might have even jumped onto it, even
Some
though
of you who are up late at night.
up
we
late
see
at
you.
night. We were streaming live. We were confused about what was happening. Classic Supergirl Radio vibes.
It was like our own Crisis.
It was our own Crisis. We still don't really know what we would use it for. You know, basic StreamYard stuff.
Yeah, so apparently you can stream to Instagram if you want to do that, but only for an hour, which is tough for us because we never stay to an hour.
We're a little wordy.
And I also, just as an update to that, I never found it in our archive. It was supposed to archive. It was supposed to go to the archive, and then it wasn't there.
Are we surprised? Really?
Not really. So I don't know that we'll be doing any streaming from StreamYard to Instagram anytime soon. But if you want to see us test that out, it's a pretty fun test for it. You can check us out at patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. Well, if you want to keep up with me, you could do. Well, no, that's Morgan. Those are Morgan's plugs.
Oh,
yeah. You can find me on several places. I'm on Vero at Derby Kid, where I share what I'm watching, what I'm listening to, some videos that I've worked on. You can also find me on Instagram at the Derby Kid, where I like to share Instagram stories of like dogs on escalators and kittens or cats walking in the snow. Real fun stuff over on Instagram. I also have a personal YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod, which I really need to get some new content up on. So that should be happening within the next couple of weeks. So be following me over there. And I also should mention that this week, DC Cinematic Minute, which is a podcast about the DCEU and DC movies in general, I am the featured guest podcaster for minutes 171 through 175 of Zack Snyder's Justice League. So if you want to hear me chatting it up with Mark and Nate over there, make sure you're subscribed to DC Cinematic Minute and check out those episodes. I personally think they're pretty great. I'm pretty biased, but we in one of the episodes we talked about there's a moment in Zack Snyder's Justice League where Lois is reaching into a box to get out one of Clark's flannel shirts because he's shirtless for a large portion of the movie. And she gets a flannel out of a box. And I was so glad because I had written in my notes, how did they achieve this shot? because it's a perspective looking through the box, and then the box like the camera moves up through the box. And I was so glad that Mark and Nate brought it up because I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. So it seems like a boring shot. But we talked about it at great length about how that thing was accomplished. So if you are into nerdy stuff like that, check out DC Cinematic Minute because it's one of my favorite podcasting moments. Just because I was like, I want wondered about that too.
I also wanted to know what's in the box.
So my minutes are happening this week. So Monday and Tuesday have already come out. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you will also hear my conversations with him over there.
That's awesome. You can catch up with me on social media at @mojotastic on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me as a co-host on the Legendary Ladies podcast, which you can find at the Legendary Ladies on YouTube and Instagram, and at legends_podcast on Twitter. This week, I think we are going to be talking about. We might be talking about the Oscars. We might be like digging in a little bit to the Oscar nominations. We were like, it's of the moment. It's now. Why not? Why not do it? Last week, Amy and I talked about the Showtime show Fellow Travelers, which actually also stars Matt Bomer. So
a lot of Matt Bomer.
Really having a Matt Bomer moment this month. I don't hate it. So if you missed that, you can always catch up with that episode. Or if you have hot takes, opinions about the Oscar nominations.
Oh, I do.
Definitely like send us in some of your thoughts. You can tweet us at legends_podcast. You can email us at thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought. Did you like the nominations? What about the snubs? How'd you feel about the snubs? Send us in your thoughts, because I'm sure we're gonna be talking about it. I gotta be honest and say that I haven't watched like all of the Oscar movies, so now I feel like I gotta like really buckle down and see some more of these, because I've been meaning to see a couple of them, but like some of them are 3 hours, and it's like you gotta be in the right mood, you know.
Are you serious about wanting hot takes? Because I might send you an email.
Scorching hot.
Because when I saw an article today about, oh my gosh, Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie weren't nominated for Barbie, I was like, yeah, that movie was terrible. Why would they be nominated for that? So I have really hot takes about that. Greta Gerwig might be a great director, just not for this one. Just not for. So let her win an Oscar for some other movie, just not for Barbie.
I know we disagree about Barbie, but yeah, I wasn't surprised so much about Margot. I think it was a very tough actress category this year, but I was surprised about Greta. It does feel like there might have been like, oh no, we already nominated a lady, we can't outdo. But you know, they nominated who they nominate. The Oscars continue to be wild in the ones that they do nominate and the ones that they don't nominate. I feel like there's always a long list of people who are angry about snubs every time that the Oscar nominations come out. And it's one of the most fun days to be on social media, because everyone's like, what about this person? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. What about them? That sucks.
Well, I would be more upset if the movie she made won an Oscar, because it makes no sense. Barbie as a movie makes no sense. So I would prefer for Greta Gerwig, if she was going to win an Oscar, to win one for a story that makes sense.
I believe Barbie is nominated for Best Picture. So
are you serious?
Yes. So for the people who are really upset about it, like, if Barbie wins, Greta gets to go up and accept the nomination.
I'm gonna have a meltdown. I'm gonna have a complete meltdown. That was nominated for Best Picture. The Oscars have not mattered to me for a long time. Once I realized how like political they were, and like I guess if you pay a little money to the
the studio's campaign.
Yeah. So it's not like they're getting it on merit. But oh my gosh, come on. That movie made absolutely no sense by the end of it. Why would Barbie choose the patriarchal real world? I never understood it. I cannot believe.
To be fair, I would also stay in Barbie world, so seemed better. Everything was pink. But yeah, there's quite a few nominations, and I wasn't surprised that it was nominated, but for, you know, it does suck that she didn't get the director nomination, but you know, these things are always a little bit wild.
I don't know if you all want my hot take.
It might be too hot.
It might be too scorching hot, because oh my gosh, Best Picture. See, all right, this is the
I've
last thing
seen
I'm gonna
so few of these. Wow. Is Barbie the only one I've seen? That's not good.
I think sometimes they will nominate movies like that also just so people will watch because people are not watching the Oscars anymore because they suck. They're like 3 hours long. Nobody cares. The movies that are nominated, nobody's seen. The hosts are terrible. So it's like, why do you watch the Oscars? So if there's a chance that Barbie might win Best Picture, maybe people will tune in actually. So I don't know that it's getting there on merit. I think it's getting there because they want people to tune in. So I think I've frozen up. Have I frozen
I
up?
think yeah, I think so.
I almost made it 2 hours and then
I mean, this has got to be a record for us recently.
StreamYard was very unhappy about my my take.
Your hot takes were too hot for StreamYard.
So unfortunately, I have to go out and come back in order to help us end the stream here. So can you maybe talk more about the Oscars and I will come back in?
I can vamp.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry to make you do
this. No problem. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list of Best Pictures and realizing that I have seen just Barbie. So that's embarrassing. I feel like I will say that Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer are both on my to watch lists. I've heard great things about past lives. And some of these I've truly haven't even heard of at all. I don't know what Zone of Interest is or what it's about. It seems like there's a lot of, also that there's a lot of Best Picture nominees. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10. There are 10.
They
Best
did
Pictures.
extend it. I need to check my microphone. Yeah. They did extend it to 10. If I remember correctly, when The Dark Knight came out. Because people were like, I mean, The Dark Knight is a great film, but like it's a comic book movie. Can we also nominate other movies, but then also nominate this comic book film? And so I think they extended it to 10 films when The Dark Knight came out.
Are we serious people if we nominate a movie people are excited to see in the theaters?
That was actually pretty good.
That was good. So yeah, no, that's true. You're right. I think that happened like 10 years ago or so. Maybe more.
I think it happened with The Dark Knight. That's when I remember it. Yeah, so I definitely have some hot takes. So maybe I won't put that on the legendary ladies. Maybe the legendary ladies won't want that.
But if your hot takes are maybe like a little less, a little
less intense,
the legendary ladies at gmail.com.
Well, I'm gonna have to now watch all of the other Best Picture nominees just to cleanse the palate.
Mark says yes because The Dark Knight didn't get nominated, so they raised the limit the following year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I do remember there was a lot of like it was much like today where everyone was mad. I have to say Oscar nomination day is one of my favorite days to be on social media. Everyone's just so angry about who didn't get nominated. And it's honestly, if you just like see who everyone's angry about and then jot down those movie names, you probably have a pretty nice movie night for yourself.
Yeah, I mostly don't care. I just so heavily dislike the Barbie movie that I just like, oh my gosh. But I think it's just there so people will tune in. But watch Barbie win Best Picture, and it will go down in the history books as similar to Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca from 1940. It'll be just like Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca, just the same quality as that one.
Oh yeah. When we're really old, we'll be like, you remember Barbie?
That the classic film.
A classic film. I mean, it will be at that point. But
yeah, somebody 30 years in the future is going to be on Turner Classic Movies, the Essentials, where they talk about the movies that really made film cinema for them.
Mind the Gap has a good point. Didn't Minari get nominated for Best Foreign Movie when it was set in Arkansas? Yeah, the Oscars are a wild. Listen, you just got to strap in. You just got to be like, whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna do. And every year there's a fun controversy, and that's really the gift that the Oscar gives to us is just like the discourse. So
I think
I'm glad it's still delivering year after year in that way.
It's actually really sad because when I was growing up, I loved award season. I watched all the award shows. I would fill out a little ballot. I loved it. Now I'm like, I don't care. I don't even watch them anymore. So I'm just gonna go back to watching movies I want to watch.
That's
I
the
think
thing.
that's a good way to handle that.
You don't have to watch movies like homework if you're not interested. You just don't have to watch it.
I think that's a great way to live your life. Just watch the movies you want to watch. That seems good. Oh, and I did not bring up my Google Doc of things that we need to say as we
I think
this.
we were right at the end.
Right at the end. And StreamYard was like, nope, not today. So, well, I guess after all of that talk, after that very long tangent that we took about the Oscars, I'm looking forward to hearing the legendary ladies talk about it, though. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And we must bear witness to Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2.
Whenever
it happens.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is 𝙁𝙪𝙨𝙩𝙞𝙪 Boardroom or Ballroom because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!